Our next speaker, Tom Huizer, another select alumni, just graduated very recently, and he will talk to us about the Dutch climate case. Welcome.
Okay, thank you, Robin, for the introduction. Hello, everybody. My name is Tom. Most of you, luckily, I know. So yeah, as the title says, today I will talk about taking climate change to court, and it will be some sort of a combination between my own story, because I went to Greenland to study glacier melt, to study the impact of climate change. And on the other hand, I will talk a bit about a recent event that happened in Holland, where 900 citizens went to court and they said, well, Dutch government, you have to do something about it. So I will talk about these two things, and I will merge them somewhere in the middle. So, first of all, as part of the program Select, in my summer internship, I decided I would like to learn more about climate change. So I looked on Google and I found a very interesting program, which included a trip to Greenland with 15 other scientists to study the impact of glacier melt. So I went there, I subscribed, and I got accepted, which was super excited. And I went to Greenland and I spent there 4 weeks in the middle of nowhere. Nothing there, completely disconnected from society. And with 15 people, we studied there one specific glacier. We studied it, and they do it every year. And by doing it every year, they can tell something about how this glacier is evolving due to whatever we put in the atmosphere. Now, the experience itself for me was amazing, because you have to imagine you're in this beautiful landscape of ice and snow, completely remote, completely away from civilization. And every day we hiked up towards this glacier, which was about 7 kilometers away, with high backpacks up, 10 kilograms on our back. And then we came to the glacier and we had to climb on the glacier with ice axes, and then we did our measurements. And we did that for about 3 weeks long. It was the most amazing experience I had so far. So one evening we came home at our camp. We slept in tents, so you can imagine it was quite cold, and we tend to stay quite close to each other. So one of the guys that was local, he was actually a Greenlandic guy, he came and he sat next to me, he said, Tom, can I tell you a story? I said, sure, bring it on. I would love to hear something about your culture, about how you grew up. So he said, okay, let me tell you this story about my ancestors in the Ice Age. I said, sure, bring it up. So he started telling his story. And he said, in the beginning of my village, and this is a picture of his village now, but in the beginning of this village it didn't look like this, he said. It looked completely different because it was covered with snow and ice. He said it was the most beautiful landscape you can imagine. And he said, on one sunny evening, one of the wise women from this village, she decides to go for a walk around town. And she walks and enjoys the beautiful scenery of ice and snow. It's a sunny day, you can see the sun glistering on the ice sheet. And she decides to walk further and further and further. And all of a sudden, she comes across a hole in the ice. She's a bit skeptic. Very carefully, she approaches the edge of this hole and she looks down. And at the bottom of this hole in the ice, she sees lying a reindeer. And obviously it fell in, it was badly hurt, so she decides to help it. And she helps it, and after a struggle of about half an hour, she gets it out. She sets it free in nature, and the reindeer lives a happy life. She returns back to the village, business as usual. Now, the reindeer, and this is actually one of my personal favorite pictures, the reindeer sets out in nature and it multiplies and it multiplies and it multiplies and it multiplies. And before you know, a herd of reindeer covered whole Greenland. And the Inuit people that inhabited this village in the Ice Age decide to go hunt them. Because obviously you can see it by the picture, it's a healthy and fat source of nutrition. So they hunt the big and the fat animal, because they provide them with the most energy that they can find on the whole Greenland. So they do that for a couple of years, they live well. But after a couple of years, they notice that the herd is growing weak, because only the sick and the weak animal remain, and these are the animal that in the end multiply. So they see that their herd and their only source of energy is growing weak. So that the whole village starts to slowly get into a panic. And the panic grows and it grows and it grows, and at some point they returned to this wise woman and said, "Help, we have a problem. Please go back to the hole in the ice and try to find a solution." So that's what the wise woman does. She goes for the walk. Beautiful day again, snow and ice, beautiful landscape. You can see the snow glistering. And after about half an hour, she comes back to the exact same hole in the ice. Again, very carefully, she walks to the edge and she looks down. And this time she finds the wolf. Also the wolf obviously fell in, got badly injured, and also the wolf, she sets it free, helps it out, and the wolf goes to the Greenland and multiplies and multiplies and multiplies. And the wolf, it multiplies so strongly that they start to prey on the weak and the sick animal. So by doing this, a natural balance emerged between the people that were living in Greenland, the herd of reindeer, which were the source of nutrition, and the wolf that kept that source of nutrition in sort of a natural balance. He finished his story. I said, "Wow, man, that's beautiful. But why, can I ask, why are you telling me this?" He said, "I'm telling you this story because in a lot of ways it's like your society today." And he starts explaining me that just like the Inuit people, our society, and this is a picture of Barcelona, it's growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And we now live with about 1 million people crammed in tight cities, in flats and buildings. Only the difference is that we don't hunt reindeer, we hunt for fossil fuels. And just like the Inuit people, our herd of oil is growing weak. And our society starts to become in a panic, and we have a problem. And as the Inuit would say now, you have to go to the wise woman and find that solution. And luckily for us, we have that wise woman in our society, and she's called Lady Justice. And the funny end of this story is that I'm from the Netherlands. This is exactly what happened last year. Because an NGO called Urgenda and 900 citizens, they went to the Dutch law system and they demanded that the Dutch government do more against climate change. And that they do more to stop our thirst for fossil fuels, and that they do more to speed up the process towards renewables. So this actually is exactly what happened this year. And when I heard this, for me, this was such a fascinating story that we're now no longer battling climate change just in the field of science, but we're battling it. It's becoming a legal matter now. So I decided to read the book. It's called Revolution Justified. It's authored by the attorney that did this case.
How's it called?
It's called Revolution Justified. It's authored by the attorney. His name is Roger Cox. Maybe you heard of him. And what he's explaining in this book was fascinating to me, so I will share today with you my interpretation of his book. And through that interpretation, I will explain you how that climate case came to be. So the first question that practically came to my mind is, if we go to court, what in the first place does the judge have to protect us from? That's the basic question. And the answer is called something, it's a scientific theory, and that is called a diminishing return on social complexity. Sounds a bit complex, it's in a word, but what it means is that a society can grow, it can grow, just like the Inuit, just like our society, it can grow, but there comes a point that we can no longer pay for our energy. And when that point comes, our society has no longer the energy to facilitate growth. We become vulnerable to external effects, and this in the end might lead to the full collapse of our society. Full collapse. Scary theory, if you ask me. But let me give you an example, because this is actually what happened in the history before. And that example is the Roman Empire. Obviously, most of you heard about the Roman Empire, I guess. But what happened to the Roman Empire, just like the Inuit people, it started small. And it grew bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And to facilitate that growth, they conquered new land, more resources in, growth, resources in, growth, and so on. Now at some point the Roman Empire grew so big that it got extremely costly to facilitate it all. And at that exact same point they were no longer in conquering new land, so there were no resources coming in. And that meant that at that exact point they had a shortage of energy supply. and they got vulnerable to these external effects. And these external effects, they came in the form of weak harvest, and they came in the form of the invasion of the barbarians, and as we all know, the Roman Empire is no longer there. It collapsed completely just because a lack of resources. So scary theory. And then the question that pops in my mind really is, how complex is our society today? And I would like to illustrate that to all of you today by asking you two questions. And my first question to all of you is, how many kilometers do you think have been traveled to get a milk carton in your fridge? All the way, the whole value chain. So from production, transport, all the way by riding your bike. I mean, that's what we do in Holland. But to get it at your place, how many kilometers? Anyone?
3,000.
3,000, okay. Anyone else?
That's what way you mean where? If I take it from the farmer next to my door, it's 5 kilometers. No, the one.
Okay, but the total value chain on average? You say 5 kilometers. We have to put it up here. 100. Anyone else? 20. Okay.
500.
500. I think we have enough input. 3,000 was close. It's 8,000 kilometers. $8,000 kilometers in the whole value chain are used to get a milk carton at your place. Second product. A can of tomato sauce with meatballs. How many kilometers have been traveled to get it at your place?
20,000.
Sorry?
20,000.
20,000? That's quite extreme. Okay, anyone else?
200.
200, okay.
12,000.
12,000, okay. All right, so we have a ballpark figure. It's 32,000. When I saw these numbers, it scared me a lot, because if we have to travel these distances in the whole value chain just to get the products at our place, that means that our society has become extremely, extremely complex. And what scares me is that the whole transport sector that does all this effort to get it at your place is based on oil. And as we all know here, I don't have to tell it to you, we are running out of oil. I mean, it's there, but it's tough to get it out of the ground. And we can actually put that to numbers in something which is called the energy return on energy investment, which says something like how many barrels of oil can we get out of the ground by just investing one. It used to be around 100, and today it is only 14. And to make it even more concrete, we need about a new Iran every year just to fuel our thirst for fossil fuels. So that means, yes, we have arrived at a point, just like the Inuit people, just like the Roman Empire, that we are at a point of shortage of energy. And we are becoming very, very vulnerable to external effects, and we might not even realize this. So let me point out two cracks that we already see in our society today. And the first crack that I would like to show you is the financial crisis, or to be fair, an event that happened just before the financial crisis. And just before the financial crisis, there was something called peak oil. And what we see here is a graph, which on the vertical axis has the price of oil, and on the horizontal axis it has the timeline over years. So what we see here, that in 2008 the oil peaked. And this is because we are running out of these reserves. And you don't have to be a great economist to know that if you have a shortage of supply against an increasing demand, prices go up. And as soon as the prices of oil goes up, so do the prices of our products go up. And they went up and up and up and up until we had a full shutdown of our economy in July 2008. The collapse of the virtual financial market is just the aftermath. And we're too afraid of dealing with the real question, because that will ask some soul-searching questions about how we behave and how our economy is structured. Crack number two. global warming. Now, also about global warming, I don't have to tell you how the principle works, but after reading this book, Revolution Justified, I honestly believe it's downright terrifying. And let me explain you why that is. Because throughout our history, our carbon dioxide levels have always hovered somewhere between 180 and 280 parts a million. And as we know, these go up in natural cycles, up and down and up and down. So they went up and down and up and down and up. And at this point they should go down. But since the Industrial Revolution, we are pumping 29 gigatons annually into our atmosphere. 29. 14.5 of it is absorbed by nature, and 14.5 gigatons CO2 stays there. Just to put it in perspective, nature does only 0.1. So you can imagine that we're completely disrupting the balance in CO2 levels. And now we are at a stage where it should go down, but it's going completely through the roof. At this point, we are around 400 parts per million. And this is scary because the European Union, or to be specific, the International Panel on Climate Change said we have to mitigate, we have to stop completely at 450 parts per million to prevent serious climate change. We're dangerously close, and we already see the first effects because we see more extreme weather events. We see floods, we see droughts, we see our planet. The temperature is rising. It's already been rising 0.8 degrees. We're hurtling towards these 2 degrees in a pace that is beyond imagination, really. So 1 year ago, I was exactly here. This is a picture I took. Most beautiful picture I ever made, and next to me were standing some students, and on the right to me was a professor, and he looked at me and he said, "Tom, look at this, because by the end of the century, it might be gone." To me, it's shocking. And to me, this might be shocking, but then my question is, if these shocking effects are visible by me and visible by all of you, I guess, here in the audience, where is this mass denial? Where is it coming from? Why is nothing happening? If all alarm bells are going off, why are we not hurtling towards this energy transition that we all want so badly? And what the book writes about is something called a failure of democracy. And that failure comes in the form of the power of all the big oil companies. The oil companies have grown bigger and bigger and bigger, and they're now so big that they are literally overshadowing our voices here in the room, but even overshadowing the voices of our governments. And to put some numbers to it, this is a number I found. Annually, all our governments spend $558 billion US on subsidizing fossil fuels. We all talk about subsidizing renewables, but oil is still the heaviest subsidized commodity on Earth. It would be cool to change that to renewables. We can install 160,000 2-megawatt wind turbines. I'm not an electrical engineer, but that would help quite a lot, I think. And the oil companies have powerful lobbyists and legislators that actually influence our policies today. And if I look at my own country, I'm from the Netherlands, where this climate case happened. The turnover of Shell, which is a partly Dutch oil company, it's twice as big as the revenue collected by the Dutch state. So if you ask where is the financial power, it's dominated by these oil companies that caused the problem in the first place. So yeah, to sum it up, we have a problem. Just like the Inuit people are herd of oil or herd of reindeer, let's say, it's growing weak. And our society is going in a panic because apparently nothing is done about it. Or not enough, at least. So for the Inuit, this will be the time to go to the wise woman and find that solution. And so should we. we can go to the wise woman that in our society is called Lady Justice. And Lady Justice, she can help us out of this deadlock situation by invoking the law. And the timing to do it is exactly now. Because of this year, the climate research, let's say, is recognized throughout the legal courts. So what that specifically means, and I'm not a lawyer, so don't pin me down on it, but what it means is that because it's now recognized in the court of law, we can sue our governments for not doing enough against climate change. And that's a nice thing, and it actually happened in Holland this year. So the NGO Urgenda, together with 900 citizens, went to the court and they sued the Dutch government for not doing enough against climate change. And they've done this in a very clever way by using the precautionary principle. And the precautionary principle bases its judgment on three things. First question, is the risk of the event, is it great enough? Second one, if this event happens, how big are the consequences? And the third one, how cumbersome would it be to prevent it in the first place? So if we go back to the first question, how big is the risk of climate change to happen? It's not a risk, it's already going on, so we got that part covered. Second one, how big would the effects be if actually climate change sets in a dangerous way that is now envisioned? We saw it in the slides. We cannot possibly comprehend all the effects that climate change will have, so the impact will be enormous. And the third one, and I guess it relates to all of you here today and also to me, how difficult would it be to do something about climate change? That's what KIC is for. We have the technologies, we have the knowledge, we have the bright people to do it, so we can do it. Nothing is stopping us. So the Dutch people, they went to court and they said to the Dutch government, you have to do something to stop climate change. And you have to stop our thirst for fossil fuels. And you have to do something to speed up the process towards renewable energies. And after a long debate, this is what the judge said.
Urgenda wint in Nederland een klimaatproces. Nederland moet meer doen tegen de opwarming van de aarde.
In 2020 moet de uitstoot met zeker 25% zijn teruggebracht ten opzichte van 1990.
Het berusten in een geringere reductie is onrechtmatig tegenover urgenda.
Geweldig. Van A tot Z geweldig.
Ik was echt aan het wachten van oké, er gaat hier nog een maar komen. En die maar kwam niet. Dus ik was, ja, zoals iedereen hier denk ik.
Ik probeerde te twitteren, ik had echt trillende vingers. Ik vind het echt een historische uitspraak waar ik word gewoon emotioneel.
maatschappelijk belang waar het hier over gaat. Dat ik er niks aan kan doen dat ik even mijn professionaliteit hier verlies.
Wat maken uw kinderen mee en mijn kinderen en kinderen van mensen die thuis aan het kijken zijn als we niets doen of te weinig doen? Wat gebeurt er dan met Nederland en met de wereld?
Nou, het allerbelangrijkste wat ik voor me zie is dat heel grote gedeelte van de wereld geen water meer is, geen voedsel. En daardoor gaan honderden miljoenen mensen zich uiteindelijk verplaatsen en dan krijg je gewoon uiteindelijk oorlog. Daar maak ik mij zeg maar, deze eeuw veel meer zorgen over dan bijvoorbeeld op onze dijken nog houden, want die houden het nog wel even. Dat komt daarna.
Wat moet er, vindt u, nu meteen gebeuren? Wie moet het voortouw nemen om dat te realiseren wat u wilt?
Nou ja, de staat heeft nu van de rechter te horen gekregen, u moet meer gaan doen. Dus het is de staat die aan zet is en wij zitten vol met ideeën over hoe dat mogelijk is. Dus ik help het graag.
De premier die aan zet.
Wat mij betreft zou dit Rutte's zaak moeten zijn en moet hij ons gaan leiden naar die nieuwe economie die niet meer denkt, fossiel en circulair.
de rechterlijke macht die zegt Nederland, politici, Mark Rutte, je moet aan de bak.
So let me end with this phrase. It is no longer just a science, but it is the court of law telling us and our governments it's time to start acting against climate change now. Thank you. You can ask any questions about Greenland, how cold it was, about the case. Shoot.
Yeah, I wanted to know, because it wasn't really clear to me, what will happen to the government if they do not achieve the 25% reduction?
Yeah.
And if the government loses is sued, yeah, what will the agenda, I guess, right? What will they do with the revenue they will receive from the lawsuit or whatever? What will be the outcome?
It's a good question, and to be honest, I don't know exactly. But what is happening now is that the Dutch government, sadly, is going to the Supreme Court to fight the case. I think personally it's quite a sad statement, given that the climate panel in Paris is coming up. So I don't know what will happen, but for sure Agenda will continue keep on fighting them in the court of law, and hopefully it will lead to an impact. Yeah.
This is regarding the cloud that oil companies have. In the US and even the UK, there's a term called too big to fail. It's mostly applied to the banking sector, which means that a bank is too big to fail. If it fails, the whole sector will collapse. So do you see something like that happening to the oil industry? And maybe if the political establishment is too spineless to handle it, maybe will a similar principle, or could a similar principle be enforced by the courts?
Yeah.
Because there's already somewhat of precedent because of the banking system.
Yeah. I think you phrased it in a nice way, too big to fail, but it happened with the banks and we thought they would be the same. And that's exactly what I talk about, the cracks that we see in our society. We have to take them serious because it's indeed happening, and I'm truly relieved that the CEOs of Shell and ExxonMobil are terrified of each and every one of you in the room today. But what will happen if they fall? I don't know if you have to add to it, Claudia, but that's a good question, and it can be potential catastrophe if you ask me. Yeah.
I think there's a major difference between the financial sector and any industrial company, because the financial sector is all about trust, money is trust, whereas the whole infrastructure of oil companies can be replaced like this. So the trust in money is what holds a bank intact. The bank is nothing but trust. It's a quite complicated concept to understand, but especially if you are then having credits all over the place, then you become really system relevant. Whereas an oil company is nothing but assets that can be replaced. It would be my take, but I'm also not an expert, to be honest.
With the complication of all the workers, I'm not making a case in favor, but I mean, if you let Shell or whatever come down, there's I don't know how many thousand people that lose their jobs. So I mean, as a government, there's something needs to be there right now.
But this will not happen overnight. It's just about setting the right policies and making the change actually happen.
True.
Because
by a
it doesn't fail over time, and you cannot, or the cars do not suddenly overnight change to electric cars. So we're building the system now.
Yeah, but what he talked about is basically we have all this money that is invested in infrastructure. We have these companies, these oil companies, like yesterday I thought, I think he said, if we want to keep it under the 20%, we have to, they can only burn 20% of their reserves. So there's huge amounts of money actually that is invested in pulling all the oil out of it. So if they can't pull that oil out of it, all that money is lost. It's all money that is completely, it's stranded assets, like they call it. It's just a huge amount of our economy that slowly gets destroyed, and that's something that people are really worried about. The UK central bank has warned that it's one of the biggest financial threats in the future. It's just all these financial assets that have been invested in pulling these resources out of the ground. And if they can't do it because we put restrictions on it, it's going to have a massive impact on the financial system as well.
Aren't a lot of the assets that are in the ground still and not yet, tipped or tapped, aren't a lot of them just in the books?
Yes, but they are just in books. They are in the books, but they are also reflected in the stock prices of these companies today. And the stocks are owned not only by the oil companies, but also by banks and pension funds, stuff like that. So if they could only earn 20%, stock price would drop dramatically, should have social impact. I think this is what they fear.
It's really more comments. Yeah, I was wondering, has there been any other initiatives in other countries based on this one, suing other governments?
Yeah, currently they are trying to set up the same case in Belgium. I don't know how. You're from Belgium?
No.
Yeah, so yeah, good news. They're trying to set it up. I don't know how far they are, but I definitely hope to succeed. Yeah.
I think I've heard about it that they might try something like this in Pakistan.
Okay.
I was reading it recently, as far as I remember correctly.
Yeah. And of course, you're free to start a lawsuit in your home country if you wish. If you feel inspired, just go ahead and sue the crap out of them.
So the money system is also very unstable. It's getting more and more unstable.
Yeah, what happens is as soon as you, let me get back to the slide of peak oil. Yeah, what is happening here is what I told you, it's something called peak oil. So you can envision it a bit like we're hitting the ceiling and coming down, but we keep on hitting the ceiling, like we cannot go much higher. And the effect is as soon as you have a shortage of energy, the price will go up. It tends to go up. It's a natural economic trend. And what happens with it is that the price becomes extremely volatile because one day we think we have enough reserves, the other days we don't know. So also for the financial system, it has quite an impact, and that's what we see here already. Like the financial crisis was seriously the aftermath, and it's very interesting to look into what really caused this whole structure to fall down. So yeah, definitely, it has an impact.
And we will see that many more times with the financial system because the amount of money is growing. So the only thing that can happen is that we have higher growth than our interest, and that is very limited by the resources we have. So at some point, our natural limits on this planet will set us a border, and until then we, as you say, in the money system, in the resources, in the energy system, we will keep hitting some point, and then what happens is a crisis. That means a redistribution of wealth.
Yeah. So that's why this change towards renewable energies is so important, because renewable, it's like you have this infinite source of energy, so you no longer have that problem of hitting the ceiling. Whether this will continue in such an extent in the future, I don't know. I'm not an economist, but what I can tell you is in the 70s we had the same thing happening with the oil crisis. Prices went up because of a boycott in I think it was the Middle East, I'm not too sure. And then there was massive panic worldwide because we couldn't get enough energy to fuel our economy. And that's scary to me. Yeah.
It will happen again.
And it will happen again. Yeah.
It's a system design that brings us this.
Yeah.
So maybe it's quite smart to do like your self-sufficient home that is maybe connected with your neighbor home, with your houses, locally more sustainable sharing economy or whatever you want to call it, but something that is not so much centrally dependent. But maybe be a smart move for everybody, to advise your parents or your relatives.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a good point.
It's risk management, you never know when it happens.
Yeah, sure.
Question in the back.
Yeah, it's
secret fact. It's not a question, or it might be a question, or you can give your opinion. I was just wondering, like, nowadays, like, when we start to build up like business, it's always started with like, will it be profitable or not? And when it comes to that point, even for renewable energy, the trends that I saw is like it's getting more destructive because people want to expand much. Let's say like solar panel, it gets really, really cheap that everything is produced in China, and the cost of transporting everything from China to Europe is not cheap. And the cost of the environment that should cost because of this build of massive things of solar panel is not cheap as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's in my opinion, it should be in every people's common sense that profit is not the answer all for renewable energy or anything in the future. Like consumption should be local and everything. But the greed of humans when it comes to term of business, it's like it's all about money. So what's your opinion about it, and how do you feel it should be done in the future? Like in your opinion.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's some serious questions you're asking, but I like the question. I like the debate about it. Yeah, our economy is evolved around growth, and how we define growth in our economic system now is more. We see it throughout everything. We see it in our energy, we see it in our food, we see it in how far we travel. And I think that is a fundamental problem, and it would be amazing, also very difficult to change that game, to change the game literally of the economy system from more to better, so that you're not building more stuff, but you're building better stuff. Because there's a significant difference between building more jails and building more hospitals. More hospitals is better, but more jails, it goes into GDP, goes up, we see growth, but it's a significant difference. So my opinion is that we should shift from an economy based on more to an economy based on better stuff. I don't know how to do it. We can definitely not do it alone, but that's my opinion. Yeah.
I think the basic driver for growth is always comfort of humans. I mean, from if you start in the cave, having a fire in your cave, to now having electricity or having an easy connection to your friends or your social network or your phone or whatever. And we have a lot of problems from this period where more consumption of more, cheap stuff, whatever, to own as much as possible, was the definition of wealth or the definition of comfort. I see it in many people nowadays. You're not so likely to go to the supermarket to buy a lot. Let's say you go to a barbecue, and our parents after the war maybe, or grandparents, they would buy a lot of meat just to have as much as possible of meat because it was a sign of wealth, a sign of comfort. Whereas now you see more and more people, they would rather go and buy a delicate, nice piece of meat and really enjoy this nice piece of meat, rather than overfeeding yourself and just living off the imagination that you have something really good because you have a lot of it.
Yeah.
I think this is slowly changing. Maybe not fast enough, but I think
I hope.
it's still
Yeah.
many areas.
It's still a very focused area in this part of the world. So, and there's a huge amount of population evolving and growing in all the other parts of the world, which are not thinking about these things like you are thinking.
So a lot of particular political decisions at the moment are just based on the GDP. And actually, as we're talking about, that the economic system is based on that growth exponentially is possible, or unlimited growth is possible in the economic system. But as we know, like just looking at the resources we have, which are limited, it's not possible to have unlimited growth with this. And like making this change from taking political decisions depending on the GDP, searching for different indicators when we implement more education, more health inside it as well, would make a major difference. The best examples go to Bhutan, where they have the happiness indicator, which they're using in order to make political decisions, which is not based if they are producing more GDP. Maybe it's another extreme, probably we need the balance to all of it, but it should go in that direction.
I'd like to make a suggestion here, actually, because I really enjoy these kind of conversations, which is the interaction between energy, economy, and in different fields. So I don't know if there are not a lot of people it seems that there are quite a few people that know the word and really like these kind of interactions. And I think it's a topic that you don't meet a lot in this kind of, let's say, energy world. And I think it's an essential economy, or the economy interacts a lot with the energy sector. So one thing is either we can now start again a lot to move this, to keep this going, keep it in the Facebook group, or we can create another something separate where we can interact and continue discussing this when we see something, implement this. But if you like it, then come to me and we discuss it further how we can take this.
Maybe even because now it's like almost dinner, but people are interested just meeting at 11 in the bar and have a chat on it.
And what I recommend to all of you is to seriously read this book. I think it's maybe you cannot maybe see it in the back, but it came with a label. I couldn't open the book because the label said, "Warning, you do not have the right to remain silent after reading." So I did my best to do that. I recommend it to all of you.
So this was a very inspirational speech, but when we think about ourselves, what can we do? I can also highly recommend that, since all of you I hope know that in December there will be the COP21, so the next climate summit, and maybe one of the most, or maybe the most important one. So I would recommend everyone, since there will be like mobilizations to like voice out the need for changing the system, that there will be mobilizations, and that anyone should keep an eye out and see what is being done in their cities. There will be, for example, the so-called Climate March, 29th of November. I know that. So where people will go on the street and like demonstrate for these issues of climate change. So I would just like recommend, keep an eye out and participate and convince your friends maybe to it as well, because we want to change the world, we want to be the game changers, so we should also stand up for it.
Okay.